Warning, this fic contains many dark and adult themes. For the full list provided by the author, please check the description below and proceed with caution. Welcome back, this is Obliviate by Severitus 812, JessalynMichele, Book 1 of Harry Potter and 7 Years of Chaos. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy, and subscribe for future stories. Please check the description for a full list of tags, and the link to drop a kudos for the original author. With that out of the way, let's get started. Chapter 25, Plotting. Lucius, I trust that you are faring well. I will skip the pleasantries and get straight to my request. I believe by now you are aware that your son has formed a close friendship with Harry Potter. While this may have been a difficult relationship for him to foster, I know he would not have done so without your permission. Thus, I believe it would be best if you and I could speak openly in private. Please owl me with your earliest convenient time for us to meet. Preferably during the Easter break. Sincerely, your friend, S. Snape. Severus looked over his scroll to his oldest and closest friend carefully. It was honest, could be interpreted in either favor or displeasure towards Draco's association with Potter, and asked for an immediate audience. He hoped Lucius would respond quickly. The Easter holidays were rapidly approaching, and he needed to find Potter a summer residence before the school year ended. He had already received confirmation from the Contessa Zabini that Potter was an invited guest for a fortnight this summer. If Lucius conceded to hosting the child for at least 2 weeks as well, it would only leave Severus with a 2-week gap left to fill. It would have been ideal if he could have had Potter reside in a single location all summer, but Albus had ended that possibility before it came to fruition. He had approached the headmaster shortly after the school year had started, and again tried to impress upon him the damage Potter's relatives had done to him. He thought perhaps that Potter, being who he was, may receive more care in this regard than the Slytherins he has brought up have in the past. He was wrong, of course. I am sure that whatever the child has told you is nothing more than the dramatic retellings of an imaginative mind, my boy. Families should work their difficulties out between themselves. Harry must remain with his relative Severus. The Blood Wards are the only thing preventing the Dark Lord from finding him once he rises, as we both know he will. He had to occlude rapidly to prevent Albus from seeing his rage at stating that abusive families should just work it out between themselves. Severus had prodded a bit to try and understand how the wards had not yet fallen. He had to do so very carefully so that he did not alert Albus to Potter's homeless status. No doubt the headmaster would ship him back to Petunia and her whale of a family, and then Severus would be forced to kill them. Then he would be stuck in Azkaban. Then he would have to murder Sirius Black manually, without magic. Which actually might not be a terrible path to take now that he considers the benefits of imprisonment. But no, the child needs his protection currently. Another time, perhaps. Albus had unwittingly told him the key to why the wards had yet to fall in any case. Potter might not consider the house in Surrey to be home, but as long as he does not consider anywhere else to be home either, then the wards remain. And Severus was Slytherin enough to see his opening in that loophole. If he could find 3 or 4 places for Potter to reside at during the summer, preferably none of which that would alert Albus to his location, then his stay would be short enough where he did not quite feel all the way at home. It was cruel to make a prepubescent child a permanent guest during his holidays, but infinitely kinder than sending him back to sleep on the streets alone. Which brings him back to his current predicament. With Potter's blessing, he would be spending the first 2 weeks with the Zabinis in Italy, then hopefully 2 weeks with the Malfoys, but who could be trusted, by both him and the child, for the other 2 weeks of his break? When he considered Potter's friends, he had to mark off Theodore Nott. His father was friends with Riddle in school. The boy who lived would never be a welcome guest there. Ronald Weasley and Neville Longbottom had family members firmly in Albus' trusted order. They would not hesitate to report to him that Potter was not staying at his relative's home. Hermione Granger was a Muggle-born. While it was not a definite no, it certainly would not be ideal to leave the child undefendable in a Muggle household. Susan Bones and her Aunt Amelia Bones were Severus' next best shot. Amelia had been a part of the Order of the Phoenix in the war, though she had shown no real loyalty to Albus per se, just the cause. It was helpful that she also headed the DMLE and had covertly assisted Severus with multiple abuse cases in the past. He would have to take a gamble on fluing Amelia and carefully asking if she would be amenable to allowing her niece's friend to stay for a couple of weeks. And then, of course, he would have to get Potter to agree to this all. Which he assumed will be a problem. The brat always was. When he heard an alarm ringing from his wand, a subtle tracking alarm of his own design, he groaned aloud. Apparently today, he would be dealing with his other ongoing problem Quirrell. He had placed the charm on the entrance to the third-floor corridor and tweaked it to recognize Quirinus' specific magical signature. Thus, an alarm that only he could hear would alert him if the man entered the area. He thought it was both subtle and brilliant, a simple way to ensure that he could arrive quickly any time Quirinus entered the area and posed a threat to the stone. Which apparently he currently was. Severus quickly cast a nearly perfect disillusionment charm on himself and moved swiftly to the third floor. He slowed his pace, moving carefully and quietly as he approached the corridor. He could see Quirinus in the entrance, but the man was just standing there, twirling his wand. Was he attempting a silent spell to try and seize the stone, or was he waiting for something? Severus decided that he would wait as well, and attempt to decipher Quirinus' motives. The two men stood there, silently, waiting and watching. Severus was almost prepared to come out from his disillusionment and confront Quirinus face to face when he heard a student. It's not like anyone else is using them. He could have bashed his head against the wall with the well of frustration he felt building in him. Unless he was very much mistaken, which he rarely was, that was Ronald Weasley, and where Weasley was there was. And yes, there's Potter. Severus shifted slightly to listen more clearly. Well, what's going on here? If Severus had not seen the man's mouth moving, he never would have believed that the words came from Quirinus' mouth. He knew that stutter was faked. He pulled his wand out and had it discreetly trained on Quirinus. If the incompetent fool tried anything, he would be prepared to defend the students. Quirinus locked eyes with Potter, which set alarms off in Severus' head. Now, what kind of homework results in 4 students being covered in blood and scrapes? Christ almighty! Severus could see that Potter, who was now deathly pale, was indeed covered in small scrapes and blood smears, as was Susan Bones, who stood beside him, most likely Weasley and Draco as well, but as Severus could only see their distinctive hair around Quirinus, that was mostly a guess. We would just. Potter's terrified stammer trailed off as he desperately looked around Quirinus, likely seeking an easy escape route. Dueling, Bones interrupted smoothly. We wanted to practice dueling. Severus was fairly confident that she was lying through her teeth, but she did it rather confidently. It was impressive for an 11-year-old girl. Dueling, Quirinus laughed softly. I don't remember assigning any homework that consisted of dueling in a closed corridor. It doesn't seem closed to me, Draco drawled. Quiet boy, I was speaking to Potter, Quirinus snapped. Who is this man, and what has he done with the timid, stuttering man he usually spoke with? Severus wondered. Don't call him boy, his name is Draco Malfoy, Potter snarled. Apparently the smallest Slytherin had found his fire at a perceived insult towards his friend. Interesting. You wouldn't have happened to be snooping around beyond that door there, were you? Quirinus asked him, ignoring the child's obvious anger. Damn it all. What else would they be doing up here? No sir, Weasley answered. The door's locked, isn't it? Severus could have groaned at the boy's lack of subtlety. He must be ridiculously ambitious to have wound up in Slytherin. Potter turned towards the red head and gave him a dark look that very obviously said, shut up. Tell me, Potter, Quirinus said softly, what did you discover in the chamber beyond that door? If Potter and his friends had not already been attempting to pass Hagrid's giant dog, which Severus fully believed they were, then this conversation would be enough to entice them to do just that. He retreated partially down the stairs, removed his disillusionment charm, and decided to enter the conversation. And what is going on here? He asked coolly. I believe the headmaster requested that no one access this floor. Potter looked marginally relieved to see him, an expression which made Severus feel as if though perhaps his efforts to win the child's trust have not been in vain. SS Severus, Quirinus stammered, I found these students are roaming the hall and... Severus cut him off, already tired of the return of his faux stutter. I see. He looked over each of the 4 and saw that they were indeed all covered in minor cuts and abrasions. Follow me, he instructed them. Wait, Quirinus called as Severus made to leave the area with the students. PP Potter detention, TT tomorrow for BB being up here. Severus spun around and pointed his wand at the turban-wearing idiot's chest. Potter is hardly the only student out of bounds, is he? He hissed, out of the student's hearing range. Potter, Weasley, Malfoy and Bones will be punished by me. I suggest you find a way to explain your own interest in this area, along with your targeted punishment towards the boy who lived, before Albus undoubtedly calls you for a chat. He gave Quirinus one last withering look of disdain, before ushering the children down the staircase and away from the disconcerting situation. As he shepherded the injured first years down to his classroom, they attempted to explain the situation, which he had no wish to hear of at this moment. Sir, silence Draco. But Professor, Bones, do not speak to me at this moment. Bastard. Detention tomorrow, Potter. The children finally fell silent and exchanged nervous looks as they followed the potion's master to the dungeon. He opened his classroom door and gestured to the desks closest to his. Sit. 3 of the students trudged to the row of desks with their heads ducked low. Potter, of course, edged carefully around Severus and flinched when the door closed with a slam. So clearly he trusted Severus to protect him from Quirinus, but not to refrain from injuring him as a punishment. Building trust with a trauma victim is rarely a linear experience, Severus reminded himself. He left the children where they were in favor of gathering a few vials of healing potions from his private store. When he re-entered the classroom, he saw that the other students were clearly glancing at Potter repeatedly, concerned for his despondent state or seeking instructions on the upcoming conversation. Severus sat the bottles of healing solution on the desks. If you would please roll your sleeves up, I can heal the cuts you received from dueling. Potter glanced up sharply at him before scrunching his nose and, son of a bitch, wandlessly and silently healing him and the other students of their injuries. Severus rolled his eyes at the children's gasps of surprise. Potter was so dramatic. I find myself to be made useless in favor of Potter's whims. Malfoy and Potter, 2 points from Slytherin each for being out of bounds, you are dismissed. Miss Bones, same goes for you. He eyed Weasley closely. The red head was clearly the weak link in the group, and the most likely to supply him with answers. Weasley remained seated. Ronald shot a panicked look towards Potter, who gave him a cool look of disinterest back. Unless you wish to receive a detention on top of your point loss, I recommend leaving now, he barked at the still-seated students. Draco and Bones immediately leapt to their feet and made their way to the door. Potter walked past Weasley, grasped his shoulder roughly and whispered something low in his ear. Severus was too far away to hear what he said, but Weasley's gulp and rapidly paling face were unmistakable. Clearly Potter inspired both friendship and fear in equal quantities with his housemates. Clever boy. As the students left the room, Severus sat at his desk and focused his narrow-eyed glare on Ronald. Explain, immediately, the events of today before I arrived on the 3rd floor, he ordered harshly. Weasley fixed his eyes on his desk and began concocting an absolutely fictional tale. We were dueling, right, and Harry is really strong, okay. And so we were like, let's go somewhere with no other students, and then we remembered how the 3rd floor was already out of order, 'cause that's what Professor Dumbledore said, so we went up there. And I guess we got carried away a bit and then Professor Quirrell showed up and blimey, he's a weird bloke. And then that's when you showed up, sir. Ronald glanced up at him, in an obvious attempt to gauge if the professor had accepted his story. Severus kept his gaze inscrutable. Which student, specifically, had the clever idea to use a forbidden corridor for dueling practice? Weasley's face relaxed. He clearly thought that his story had been accepted. I'm not sure, maybe me. Severus raised a brow at him. Maybe you. Were you hit on the head during your duels and forgot a conversation you allegedly had this very morning? Weasley's ears turned red. Definitely me, sir. I see. He folded his hands together and studied the boy in silence long enough for Weasley to begin fidgeting. Yup, so can I go? Soon, Severus assured him. Which student was able to land a cutting curse on Mr. Potter? I have heard he is rather fearsome and quick in his duels. Weasley twisted his hands around on his lap before lying to him again. That was also me. I didn't mean to, I think I just got lucky. Indeed, Severus drawled. What curse did you use? The boy gawked at him, open-mouthed. Well it was. He trailed off and frantically looked around the room, as if searching for a response. It all happened pretty fast. I don't remember what spell I used. Severus pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Potter clearly had chosen a loyal friend in Weasley. An abominable liar, subtle as a traipsing bull but loyal. Or terrified. Some mixture of the two anyway. Ronald, I am going to be very clear with you. You are an appalling liar, and I pray to Merlin that you are not questioned by the headmaster over today's events. Weasley gnawed on his fingernails for a moment, a disgusting habit, before blurting. Look, can you talk to Harry instead? Because he's sort of in charge of the gang and I can't say anything, okay? He's my best mate. Severus could appreciate the position Weasley was in, but he only had one thought in mind as he dismissed the boy. Never let Albus Dumbledore hear that Potter has created a fucking gang. The child, as amusing as he was also becoming increasingly difficult to keep alive. Of course, Sunday morning, Severus was summoned by Albus. Unsurprising really, he knew this would be coming. Severus, come in dear boy, Albus cried after Severus knocked politely on his door. Come have a seat. Severus sat in one of the offered chairs, and attempted to position his body to appear as at ease as possible. Albus, he nodded his head, how can I help you? Albus peered at him happily over the rim of his glasses. I heard that there was a situation yesterday regarding Mr. Potter in the third-floor corridor. Severus sneered at his insistence on sounding omnipresent. He likely heard it from either a portrait, ghost, or perhaps Quirinus himself. There was, Severus said coolly. I encountered Quirinus, Potter, and a few of Potter's friends all on the third floor in what seemed to be a confrontation. Albus hummed happily, as if this were wonderful news. I wondered if Harry would become interested in the mystery or not. He laughed. You know his father would have been up there on the first day. Severus bit back a scathing remark about James Potter's lack of ability to follow rules and chose to focus on Albus' pleasure that Potter was nosing around the stone. You sound pleased that an 11-year-old child is interested in confronting the obstacles we created, Severus said carefully. I thought those were intended to prevent theft, not be seen as challenges to a young boy. Albus sat back in his chair and smiled serenely. But curiosity can be so overwhelming in children, can it not? Are you hopping for a confrontation between Potter and Quirinus over the stone? Severus asked, hopping for a rebuttal but knowing in his gut the truth. Albus hummed thoughtfully. We do not yet know that Quirinus is after the stone. Severus snorted at Albus' statement. Obviously Quirinus was after the stone. He did not miss that Albus had not answered his question either. Which truly was as much of a confirmation as he needed. As he reclined in his sitting room that evening, he thought back and wondered when he became disillusioned with Albus. Certainly the man had been no friend to him when he was a student. He had ignored an attempt on his life as nothing more than a harmless prank. When Severus turned sides in the war, Albus had taken the mantle of a pseudo-father while still being a demanding taskmaster. He had thought, foolishly, that him and Albus had grown close over the last 10 years. Yet he could not call a man his friend or ally that designed challenges that put Lily Potter's son in harm's way. Nor could he forgive Albus' initial threat when he shared his memories of Potter. If it comes down to stopping him, I will ensure it is done in a way to keep you separate and safe. He knew now that he could pinpoint his disillusionment with Albus at the same point he could Voldemort. Any man willing to kill a child was no man he was willing to follow. Sir. Severus looked up from his gradding, meeting the curious green eyes seated at the desk across from him. Potter had been in detention the last hour, writing lines about appropriate language, and had been worrying his lip the entire time. Severus knew he had something on his mind, but since the child had kept silent up until now, he did not believe he would be privy to his thoughts. Yes. Potter bit his bottom lip, before abruptly clearing his face of any expression except slight boredom. The child was a natural accoutrement. Sir, I was wondering if I could ask you a question, and if you gave me your real honest answer then, I'd let you ask me one, like we sometimes do. Severus leapt on an offered opportunity to learn more about Potter. I accept, however, if I deem your question to be inappropriate, or one I am unable to answer without lying to you, then I will refuse to answer, and it shall be no harm done. Acceptable? Yes, sir. Severus watched and waited patiently as the child's gaze flickered around the room. He knew Potter frequently had difficulty expressing his thoughts, and was willing to give him time in this unprecedented offer. Clearly the question was important to him. What if you don't like chocolate or vanilla? Potter blurted. He raised his brows at him but kept his face impassive. That is your question. You wish to know my preferences in ice cream flavors. Potter blushed and grimaced down at his desk. And no, I just meant. Well, pretend you had two choices, okay? He looked up at Severus through his messy fringe of black hair. And you don't really like either choice, cause they both suck, but everyone says you gotta pick one or the other. What would you do, sir? Severus appraised him for a few moments, thinking through his response. Rarely in my life have I ever been in a situation where there were only two choices, he said. He held his hand up when Potter looked ready to interrupt. No, listen. There have been many times where I believed there were only two choices, but I was wrong. There is always a third path that can be taken. It just may be hard to obtain it and hold it. Do you understand? He could tell that his response, to whatever the true question may have been, did trigger a thoughtful look from Potter. Yes, sir, thank you. Severus acknowledged his thanks with a small nod. Potter tensed up, tightening the muscles in his shoulders and limbs, and gave a small grimace. Go ahead. Severus considered asking him the true events regarding the third floor, though he was already sure that the foolish boy had attempted to get past Hagrid's beast, and so he chose not to waste this opportunity seeking validation for an answer he already believes to know. What was the most difficult part of living on your own? Potter's facial expression relaxed, as did his tense posture. That's easy, he snorted. Being alone all the time. Not much fun, is it? Not having anyone you can trust, gotta work by yourself just to find a bite to eat or drink, but it's better than Surrey, ain't it? Pitiful. Severus inspected his fingernails in a stab at feigning indifference to Potter. Was Surrey much worse than London? When Potter did not answer after nearly a minute, Severus believed the child was going to refuse to altogether. He slyly eyed the child out of the corner of his vision, and saw him deep in thought with his brows furrowed. Bit different, wasn't it? There I didn't know that I was gonna have to fight every day. I knew the rules, but I always got in trouble anyway, didn't I? Thought they'd like me eventually, but they hated me up till the day they told me to leave. Potter raised one shoulder in a shocking display of indifference. Didn't get to eat much and got beat up a lot though, so I suppose some of it was the same. Severus thought back to the injuries the child had sustained while at the hands of his relatives, fractures, lacerations and burns. Why were you unable to eat? He asked, tapering down on his curiosity. Freaks don't get food, Potter quoted. Had to eat out of the bloody trash bins, did I? Severus considered if he could possibly murder Petunia Dursley without the blood wards falling and alerting Albus. I see, is all he said out loud. Potter seemed to be in a sharing mood tonight. Perhaps the weight of all his past was simply too much to continue carrying alone, or more likely, he was not monitoring himself as tightly as usual. They just hated me, didn't matter how good I was or how quiet, he said. But it didn't matter, did it? 'Cause I knew I was special. Knew I could do things no one else could do. He looked at Severus and his green eyes were blazing. Sometimes I wish I could go back, make em regret everything they ever did. Severus could certainly understand the impulse and the need for vengeance. He himself had not shed a single tear when his father eventually drank himself to death. If it wasn't for them, and Voldemort and Dumbledore, I would have had a different life, right? Maybe I could have stayed with someone who cared but knew. Oh, Potter sneered. He just dumped me off like fucking trash. Language, he murmured softly. Potter laughed and gave him a bright smile, a startling contrast to the sneer he was wearing just a moment ago. You may not know this, sir, but I never even used that word till I met you. You're a bad influence. Severus pinched the bridge of his nose. Hopefully crude language was the worst of his habits that Potter emulated. I do not find that reassuring, Potter. As I have made many poor decisions, I do not believe that I am a man whom you should mimic. Potter leaned close to him, suddenly serious and still from his incessant fidgeting. Would you change it if you could, sir? If you didn't have to be dark or light, if those choices didn't matter no more, would you find that third choice? He asked softly, his eyes sharp. What if chocolate and vanilla both suck? Severus gave him as solemn of a look as he could, given that he was speaking with a child. Slowly he said, if there were ever another choice for me, say a third flavor outside of chocolate and vanilla, I believe that would become my preferred flavor. Potter grinned, apparently pleased that Severus finally understood his simile. Indeed, the child drawled, mimicking Severus' own phrase so exactly that he let out a surprised laugh. Even if Potter was a nightmare to keep alive, it was assuredly worth it in these moments. Severus, Amelia Bones cried in surprise, "How are you? What can I do for you?" Severus, whose knees were aching kneeling on his office floor, nodded at her and requested to come through to speak privately. "Of course," she said easily, "the password is contrasegna." Severus gave her an amused look after fluing through and brushing the soot from his robes. "Your password is password?" he asked sarcastically. "Very original, Madame Bones." Amelia sat behind her desk and gave him an impish sort of smile, not unlike the one he has seen before on her niece. "Well, British Wixen aren't likely to have any interest in Spanish, are they, Severus? Plus it reminds me to finish learning the damn language." Severus chuckled and sat at the seat across from her, at her gesture. "I suppose that is true enough," he allowed. Amelia called for a tea service and poured them both glasses. "Now, I'm sure you didn't take yourself away from your students and classes to talk languages with me, Severus. What can I do for you?" This is one of the many things he admires about Amelia Bones, her lack of interest in small talk. "I have come to you with a rather intensely private request. I wish to ask you a favor, and I would prefer, regardless of your answer, that this conversation never leaves this office." Amelia eyed him steadily behind her glasses. "Have you committed a crime?" she asked bluntly. "No. Have one of your students committed an egregious crime?" Severus' lips twitched at the qualifier. "No," he assured her. "Will I be putting my job or my family at risk by hearing your request?" "No." Amelia sat back in her seat, took a small sip of her tea, and finally tilted her chin at him. "Let's hear it then." "I have a student in my house who is in need of sanctuary this summer," he said slowly. "The child cannot return to his relatives, but his placement would need to be a secret to the point of an unbreakable vow." He grimaced as he knew he would need to fully inform her of the risks. There are those who would be incredibly interested in his whereabouts. However, those would be the very ones who the child would need shielded from. Amelia raised her brows in interest before furrowing them in thought. "Are you here to have me assist you in finding a placement for your student?" Severus held her gaze as he shook his head. "I am not. I am here to ask if you would be willing to take placement of the child for the last 2 weeks of the summer holidays." He had not yet received confirmation from Lucius. However, he had mentioned to Draco that he was awaiting his father's response in a request for Potter to stay with them briefly over the summer. He was utterly confident that the acceptance would reach him soon. "And you see no difficulties from any opposing parties to Mr. Potter staying with Susan and myself over the summer?" Amelia asked shrewdly. Severus blinked at her in surprise. He had not said that the student in question was Harry Potter. She always was rather sharp and quick on the uptake, for a Hufflepuff. "Apologies, I was hoping that if you refused, I would not need to reveal the student's identity. It seems that you saw right through me." Amelia smirked at him. "Susan has been sending constant letters about her best friend Harry Potter. She's also mentioned how much she worried about what kind of life he has outside of school." She adjusted her glasses and narrowed her eyes at him. "So Severus, between you and I, what kind of life does Britain's magical boy hero have outside of Hogwarts?" Severus hesitated. He had to tread carefully in order to protect Potter's tentative trust in him. Yet, Amelia Bones would undeniably be a powerful ally that could be easily swayed through pity for the orphan child. "I have sworn secrecy to Harry. However," he pulled a parchment out of his robe pocket and offered it to her. "If this were to fall out and you read it, then I have committed no act that the child can find treasonous." Amelia accepted the scroll, a copy of Potter's extensive medical scan, and glanced at her watch. "I have a department meeting in 10 minutes. May I pursue this and owl you my response?" "That would be more than acceptable," Severus assured her. "If you were able to do so quickly, it would be preferable, as we are approaching the end of term soon." Amelia nodded her understand, and he bade her a good evening. The bait had been laid, the request had been made, all he could do now was wait. The very next morning Severus received a scroll, specifically delivered to his private quarters. "Severus, I accept. Please send me the dates and location where I can pick up the potion. Sincerely, Madam Bones. Yes, Amelia was very quick on the uptake, even for a Hufflepuff. Chapter 26, Through the Trapdoor, again, Part 1. Harry spent a lot of time getting to know about magic and magical history. If he was going to be a part of this world, he wanted to know everything about it. Especially since he seemed to be so important to the people in it. He thought a lot about what Nott and Draco told him about the war, and what Voldemort tried to do through his rise to power, as they called it. My father said he wasn't always so insane, Draco whispered in the privacy of their dorm. He said when he started out that he just wanted wizards to not hide anymore. He wanted muggles to stop attacking us or thinking that magic is some freaky joke. Well, Harry could understand that. What made him go insane? Harry whispered back. He was curious how one of the supposedly strongest wizards in the world loses his mind. Nobody knows for sure, Nott told him, but my father thinks it was overuse of dark magic. And there it was again, this mad classification of magic, dark or light. My parents were tortured by dark magic, Neville confided to him in the dark of the empty Quidditch pitch one night. I wouldn't ever use it. It's incredibly dangerous, Hermione had said to him, surrounded by books in the library. Professor Dumbledore is the greatest wizard in the world, and he fought for muggle-born witches like me in the war. He never used dark magic, and now he helps make sure that certain dark spells are outlawed. That was another thing Harry didn't understand about this world: muggle-borns, half-bloods and purebloods. Who gives a damn what bloodline a person has? Everyone bleeds red. Voldemort was an idiot for caring about that. Hermione didn't have any magic in her family, and she was brilliant, top of their year. Harry would take her on his side in a fight over some pureblood moron like Crabbe or Goyle. But Dumbledore was stupid for giving a damn about the darkness of a spell. Harry was pretty sure he could kill a person with the right combination of Illumos and Wingardium Leviosa. Harry also thought a lot about what Professor Snape had said. There is always a third path that can be taken, it just may be hard to obtain it and hold it. Do you understand? Harry wondered if there had ever been a third party in the war. Someone who told Dumbledore that dark magic isn't inherently bad, or told Voldemort he was insane for thinking anyone, regardless of their families, who had magic in their veins was somehow unworthy. If there were ever another choice for me, say a third flavor outside of chocolate and vanilla, I believe that would become my preferred flavor. He had talked about it with Susan while she revised for their charms final. Just 'cause fucking Dumbledore won, don't mean he was right, Harry confided to her in the warded classroom they liked to talk in. He shouldn't get to say that some magic is illegal. Did he win though? She asked softly. A lot of people think Voldemort is still alive and active somewhere, just waiting for a good time to return. Harry hoped he did. It would be nice to kill the man who killed his parents. And in the deepest part of him, the part he would never confide to even Susan, he thought it might be nice to kill Dumbledore for what he did to him as well. Just get rid of both of them. He'd probably sleep easier if he did. He had to put his fantasies of revenge on hold though. Exams were coming up quickly, and all the teachers seemed to be bearing down harder on them than ever before. Your written exams are just as important as your practical, McGonagall lectured them. I suggest that those of you who lack in penmanship skills, here she gave Harry a small glance, work diligently to improve. Harry talked with Hermione, and was relieved to find out that even if he got all zeros on his written exams, as long as he aced the practical tests, that he would pass in the mid-range of their class. He wasn't worried. Longbottom, you idiot, Professor Snape hissed in one of their potions classes. Kindly refrain from melting a cauldron during your exam, lest I have to shoulder the shame for teaching you this year. Neville had stuttered out an apology, but Harry subtly rolled his eyes at him behind Snape's back. He could be such an arse. Potter, Snape barked at the end of the lesson, stay behind. Maybe his eye roll wasn't as subtle as he thought. When the last of the students had left, Ron promising to save him a spot at dinner, Harry watched warily as Snape closed the door behind them. Sir, Harry asked curiously, did I do something? For some reason Snape's lips twitched into what Harry has decided is his version of a smile. I am sure you have, he said lightly, but since I have not caught you yet we will instead discuss your summer plans. Harry grinned at Snape's absolute assuredness that Harry had done something wrong lately. He didn't think he had, if you didn't count the red rock he'd taken to carrying around with him. Susan and Draco were still working hard to figure out exactly what was so special about it. I believe that the Leaky Cauldron is a poor summer home for you this year, Snape said, entirely out of the blue. Harry was about to argue that the Leaky Cauldron was the best place he'd ever stayed, when Snape caught him by surprise again. If you wish, I believe your friends would like you to stay with them this summer. Harry stared at him blankly. Susan wants me to stay with her, he asked. Snape raised an eyebrow at him and gave him an amused smirk. And Mr. Zabini and Mr. Malfoy, I believe you have more than one friend. Oh yeah, Harry remembered Blaze's offer from the beginning of the year. I forgot that was part of our deal. Blaze said I could stay with him and his mum in Italy. What deal? The professor asked interestedly. Harry waved one hand airily. Blaze said if I let him in the be my friend, that I could come visit this summer, didn't he? Snape groaned and scrubbed a hand wearily across his eyes. I am going to pretend that I did not almost hear you refer to your friends as a gang, Potter. Harry just shrugged. Oh, Professor Snape groaned again before continuing. Also, Draco would like you to go spend a couple of weeks with him, and Susan's aunt has invited you to her home for the last 2 weeks. Harry narrowed his eyes suspiciously at Snape. Why would all these people just randomly invite him over? What for? How come they didn't invite anyone else, huh? What you do tell Em I needed a place to stay? 'Cause I don't, he spat. He wasn't anyone's charity case. I have no idea who all they have invited over this summer, Snape said easily. For all I know, there may be just hordes of annoying children at Malfoy Manor this summer. Harry snorted, even though he was pretty sure Snape was just saying that so he wouldn't be mad. What do you tell Em? I told them that you, like many of my Slytherins, had a home life that I found distasteful for a young man, and that I was sure Draco and Susan would enjoy spending time with you over the summer. Snape looked right at him when he said it, and Harry couldn't help think that there was a look in his eyes that said he was telling the truth. That's all, he checked. You didn't tell Em anything about, any of it. I did not. I gave absolutely no specifics. Harry weighed his options here. It would be wicked to spend the summer with his friends, but he didn't want to seem like some pathetic charity kid either. I can pay for my own food and stuff, he said. Snape raised one shoulder in a dismissive gesture. You are welcome to discuss that with them. Although I believe Narcissa Malfoy will be mortally offended if she thinks you believe they need financial assistance to host one of Draco's friends for a couple of weeks. How come Draco and Susan didn't mention this me? He asked suspiciously. Why would they invite him over, but tell Snape instead of him? I believe Draco is waiting to surprise you and retrieve you from Italy on your birthday. You may have noticed his tendency for dramatics by now. Harry laughed a little. Draco was pretty dramatic. And Susan must have asked her aunt for permission, who then requested permission from me as your head of house, before Susan planned to ask you, Snape said. I am sure she will bring it up soon. I assumed you would rather know now, so you had the opportunity to get all of your paranoia out of the way in private. Harry blushed, even as he acknowledged the slightly teasing lilt to Professor Snape's tone. Can I go to the Leaky if I don't want to stay at their houses? He checked. It wouldn't do any good to be trapped somewhere again, even if it was only for 2 weeks. Certainly, Snape agreed easily. I would like to request that you write to me immediately if you choose to check into the Leaky Cauldron, though. Certainly, Harry mimicked. Snape's lips did that weird twitchy smile thing again, and he waved his hand towards the door. Go brat, plan on leaving with Blaze Zabini on the last day. Harry was almost to the door when the professor added, and it would be best not to share your summer plans with anyone you do not wholly trust. I would prefer the headmaster not knowing. He glanced back at the professor and acknowledged him with a curt nod, but as he walked to the Great Hall, he thought it over. Why can't Dumbledore know where he's staying over the summer? Why did it matter if he stayed with Draco or if he was in Surrey? For that matter, why does it matter to the headmaster of his boarding school what he does in the summers? Something was suspicious about how much Dumbledore paid attention to him. A lot of people think Voldemort is still alive and active somewhere, just waiting for a good time to return. Did Dumbledore expect him to fight Voldemort again if he came back? Maybe just use his forehead as some sort of killing curse shield. Could someone survive getting hit by the curse twice? Why did he survive it the first time? Harry sat with his gang at the dinner table and quietly thought it over some more. Was he just that powerful, or Voldemort that weak and insane, or was there something else in play? "Hey Ron," Harry called quietly, "can I ask you something and it stay between us?" "Sure mate, want to talk in the dorm later?" "Nah." Harry flicked his fingers out thinking keep people from hearing us, and a shimmering light blue dome encircled him, Ron, Draco and Blaise. He smirked at Not's look of annoyance at not being included. This was just for his gang. "Didn't you say before that your mum and dad fought in the war?" "Yep, my uncles died in the war too," he said, around a mouthful of pork. Harry glanced at Draco and Blaise, and leaned slightly closer to the three of them. "Did they ever say why Voldemort went after me, or how I was able to stop him?" Ron sat his fork down and furrowed his brows thoughtfully. "I dunno, they never talk much about it to me. Want me to ask them?" Harry waved his offer off, disappointed in his lack of information. "Nah, don't worry about it. I could ask my father," Draco offered quickly. "He would probably know at least the Dark Lord's motivation for targeting your parents." Harry eyed him speculatively. "Yeah, why would he know that?" Ron smirked and leaned towards Draco. "Yeah, Malfoy, why would your father know anything about it?" Draco shifted in his seat, looking uneasy. He fought in the war too," he said softly. "Just, not on the same side as Weasley's parents." Harry stilled in his seat. How the fuck had he not noticed that before? "'Kay, then you ask him what he knows, and tell me soon as you do." Draco nodded quickly, looking relieved for some reason. Blaise gave Harry a curious look, one Harry has gotten used to receiving from him. "You don't care that the Malfoys were on Voldemort's side before?" he asked, ignoring Draco's twitch of irritation. "Nope," Harry said, dispelling the privacy dome. "Draco, on my side now, ain't he?" "What sides are we talking about?" Not asked. "He who must not be named and Dumbledore," Ron answered. Blaise was still studying Harry while Draco seemed pleased with his response. "Aren't you on Dumbledore's side?" Blaise asked. Harry curled his lip up at the thought. "No," he snarled. "I'm on my own side like I've always been." Ron nudged him gently. "Not just you anymore though, you've got us now." Harry gave him a tight grin, but he felt something knotted in his stomach loosen, just a bit at his declaration. Unlike some of his classmates, Harry was excited for exams. He wanted a chance to just show off for no reason other than getting a good grade. Thanks to the warmer weather, it was sweltering hot, especially in the large classroom where they did their written papers. They had been given special, new quills for the exams, which had been bewitched with an anti-cheating spell. Harry had written his answers slowly, taking his time to make sure it was as legible as possible. They had practical exams as well. Professor Flitwick called them one by one into his class to see if they could make a pineapple tap dance across a desk. Harry had done his silently, without his wand, and from Flitwick's beaming smile he knew he had aced it. Professor McGonagall watched them turn a mouse into a snuff box. Points were given for how pretty the snuff box was, but taken away if it had whiskers. Harry gave her a ruby-encrusted golden snuff box and caught her lips curling into a pleased smile. Snape tried to make everyone nervous, breathing down their necks while they tried to remember how to make a forgetfulness potion. Harry thought it was ironic that it looked like most of his classmates had forgotten some of the steps. Harry had done the best he could in his defense practical, identifying spell categories based on their color, but his throbbing head made it difficult to concentrate. "Nearly there, Potter," Quirrell murmured as Harry left his classroom. Quirrell was a weird bloke. Ever since the incident on the third floor, he'd been giving Harry these really creepy, intense stares, and trying to find opportunities to talk to him alone. Not that Harry gave him any. He told Blaise how weird the man was, and he had taken it upon himself to stay at Harry's side at all times when Quirrell was around. Their very last exam was History of Magic. 1 hour of answering questions about batty old wizards who'd invented self-stirring cauldrons, and they'd be free for a whole week until their exam results came out. When the ghost of Professor Binns told them to put down their quills and roll up their parchment, Harry couldn't help cheering with the rest. "That was far easier than I thought it would be," said Hermione, as they joined the crowds flocking out onto the sunny grounds. "I needn't have learned about the 1637 Werewolf Code of Conduct, or the uprising of Elfric the Eager. Hermione, nobody wants to talk about exams after they're done, Susan said, linking her arm with Harry's. He tensed up slightly at her casual touch, but he was growing more used to it. What do you guys want to do? Susan asked the rest of the kids. Let's play chess, Ron called. Draco and Not both groaned out loud at that. No way, Weasley, Draco sneered. You've taken enough of our money. Ron had been systematically playing and beating most of the students in Slytherin. Harry heard he made a decent profit off it. We could play Exploding Snap, Blaise suggested. Nobody seemed to have a problem with that idea, so Harry volunteered to run back to the dorm to grab their cards. On his way back through the castle, Snap cards safely in his pocket with the red rock, Harry caught himself smiling and shook his head. Just because life was good now didn't mean he should get used to it. He was lecturing himself on staying alert to weaknesses so severely that he almost didn't notice the headmaster in the hallway. He barely ducked off to the side, hiding behind a tapestry, before Dumbledore or McGonagall could spot him. I'm afraid I must go, the headmaster said softly, although louder than Harry would if it was meant to be a private conversation. Fudge insisted on me making an appearance in person this evening. I'm sure we can carry on in your absence for one evening, Albus, McGonagall replied dryly. I have the utmost trust in you handling the students, my dear, Dumbledore said. I just worry that this could be a ploy. A ploy? Harry couldn't see the pair of them, but he imagined McGonagall's sharp tone matched an equally sharp look in her eyes. For what? She asked. The Sorcerer's Stone, of course, Dumbledore chuckled. What the fuck is a Sorcerer's Stone? Harry wondered. McGonagall lowered her voice to a near whisper. Harry had to lean partially out of the tapestry to hear her. Do you believe someone is going to make an attempt on it while you're gone? I do, Dumbledore sounded solemn. Then you can't leave, McGonagall exclaimed. You should tell Cornelius to simply flew to you. Oh no, dear, I am confident in the traps we set in the corridor, and I doubt whether Riddle would have the courage to face you, Dumbledore chuckled. Corridor, Riddle, wait, is the rock a Sorcerer's Stone? Harry heard McGonagall huff in what he imagined to be exasperation. He who must not be named is as likely to appear in our castle as Severus is to win Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile award. Is Voldemort's name Riddle? He almost smacked his head on the wall in annoyance at himself. Of fucking course it is. Who would name their child Voldemort? We must always be alert, dear, Dumbledore continued. At any rate, I shall be leaving after dinner. I suggest you patrol the corridor after 10 o'clock. It would be the more opportune time for anyone to attempt the theft. Yes, well, I will speak with Phileas and Severus about setting up a guard for tonight after you leave, shall I? Wonderful idea. I will meet you at dinner to hear the final plan. Harry heard the light tap, tap, tap that meant McGonagall had left the hall. He held his breath, waiting for the footsteps that would say Dumbledore had left as well. Harry heard the headmaster sigh, kind of dramatically in Harry's opinion. I hope our traps are enough to keep Voldemort from the stone, he said softly before Harry heard the telltale sounds of him leaving the hall as well. Harry counted to 10, making sure nobody would see him leaving his hiding spot, before sprinting to the lake. Harry, Draco called as he skidded to a stop in front of the group. What took so long? Did you get the cards? Not asked. Harry waved his hand and told his magic to make their conversation private. Never mind all that, he said dismissively. What do you guys know about a Sorcerer's Stone? Chapter 27, Through the Trapdoor. Again, Part II. Harry sat with everyone at dinner. Susan, Hermione, and Neville were at the Slytherin table more than they were at their own nowadays. He kept his mind on the task he would be doing tonight, and kept from glancing up at the head table out of sheer willpower. Which apparently Ron did not share. For God's sake, Weasley, could you look any more suspicious? Blaise hissed after Ron shot yet another guilty glance towards the professors. I'm nervous, Ron hissed back. Why's not drawled, you've been down there before. Yeah, so I know what's down there, Ron defended himself. Harry interrupted their argument with a snort. Nobody going with me this time, got it. I'm going alone and you guys are following the plan. Susan and Draco both huffed and crossed their arms at the exact same time, which made Harry smirk in amusement. I don't like it, Susan muttered. If you get hurt, how will we know? I won't, Harry said simply. What if they changed the potion bottles? Draco fretted. They didn't. What if you know who really is down there? Hermione whispered. Harry shrugged and gave her a sharp smile. Then, I'm gonna kill him, ain't I? The rest of the kids stared at Harry wide-eyed before Neville, oddly enough, smiled back. If anyone could do it, it'd be you, he said. Thanks, Nev, fingers crossed, yeah. Susan glared at him before abruptly grinning. If you live, I have something exciting to talk to you about after, she said brightly. Don't say that, Hermione scolded her, pale-faced. This is a really dangerous idea. More dangerous than Voldemort common, back in Bane, able to live forever, Harry asked her. I still think it's rather suspicious that Dumbledore said all that right where you could hear him, Blaise said. I mean, you put up privacy charms to discuss homework sometimes, but the headmaster just talked about an invaluable stone and the return of a vengeful Dark Lord right in the open. Susan nodded in agreement. Thank you, it's like he wanted someone to hear him. Harry shrugged. Dumbledore's lack of secrecy wasn't really his problem, was it? Nott, who had been rather quiet up until now, chimed in thoughtfully. I think he knew Harry was there, and he wants him to try and stop the Dark Lord. And that made Harry pause, because wasn't he just thinking a couple weeks ago that maybe Dumbledore kept a close eye on him, just so he could use him to stop Voldemort again? Susan apparently came to the same conclusion, because she shot a dark look up to the head table. Theo's right, Harry, you already have the stone, there's no reason to go down there. Harry stared at her incredulously. No reason to go, he asked softly. Are you serious? The man killed my parents, Susan, and tried to kill me, didn't he? I'm not gonna pass just cause it's a little scary to you guys. I'm going, and that's that, and anyone who wants to fight me about it should say so now, cause I'm not wasting time after dinner. He glanced around at all the other kids who, aside from Susan, dropped their gazes to the table and shook their heads. Susan, he sighed, come on, I don't want to fight you. I'm not going to fight you, she said, just take me with you instead, please. Harry stared at her for a few seconds, considering before nodding. Kay, meet me outside your common room at 9:30, all right? I'll see come too, Neville offered softly. Harry just shook his head. No, you just wait in your common room, Kay. Ron, gonna come tell you if I'm not back by midnight. Ron, who wasn't a big fan of Harry's plan, groaned. I still say if I get caught outside Gryffindor Tower at midnight, I'm a dead man. Your brothers are Gryffindors, right? Hermione asked. Just say that you were homesick and wanted to talk with them. All the boys at the table looked at Hermione, shocked. What? She asked defensively. Just because I don't like breaking the rules doesn't mean I don't know how. Harry grinned at the Ravenclaw girl and let himself laugh for a moment. Brill Myoni, it's a good idea. Hermione smiled back at him, although she seemed to be more nervous now that he praised her than she was before. Weird. All set, Harry asked his dorm mates later that evening. You remember the plan? It's a bad plan, Ron grumbled. It will be fine, Weasley, Draco drawled. Harry is going under the cloak. If he is not back by midnight, then one of us is to go inform Professor Snape immediately, he recited dutifully. Then Ronald goes to let Neville know, and I go inform Granger, Blaise added. And Nott should go tell Susan too, Harry informed them with a small smirk. Draco groaned aloud at that, and pinched the bridge of his nose in a way that reminded Harry quite a bit of Professor Snape. You aren't taking her with you, are you? Nope, he said cheerfully, and if anyone wants to fight me about it, you should do it now. None of the boys said anything, so Harry clapped his hands together. Tar then. Harry pocketed the red rock he transfigured, pulled his invisibility cloak on, and made his way out to the dungeons. We're getting Professor Snape now, right? Theo asked. We are a part of the gang, Blaise said carefully. We cannot go against Harry's plan, because as his allies we agreed to support him. So Draco, Ronald, and myself cannot go get Snape until at least midnight. Ron stared hard at Theo until the other boy rolled his eyes. Fine, he sighed, but if Potter tries to kill me for doing this, then I expect one of you to have my back. After Theo left the common room, Blaise chuckled and shared an amused look with the other two boys. He can expect what he wants, he drawled, but I'm certainly not going to side against Potter. Draco and Ron agreed. Harry was terrifying when he was angry. Harry felt a little stab of guilt when he saw Susan waiting patiently outside her common room entrance. But he couldn't risk her getting hurt. He also couldn't risk getting distracted watching over her and risking himself getting hurt. Put her to sleep, he thought with his eyes squeezed shut. When he opened his eyes, he saw Susan was slumped over on the ground, sound asleep. He didn't think he was imagining the look of betrayal on her face. He continued up to the 3rd floor, hoping she would forgive him when she woke up. Harry smirked when he opened the corridor door and saw that the giant dog was already asleep. There was a harp playing itself to the side of the room. Apparently the old headmaster wasn't wrong in thinking someone was going to try and steal the stone tonight. At least I don't have to sing, he thought happily as he opened the trapdoor. He peered down into the hole but couldn't make anything out. Here goes nothing. Harry gave a sharp tug on his magic and sent 6 floating Lumos lights down to clear the plant away before he jumped. Which, in hindsight, was a bloody stupid idea, because instead of landing on a soft plant, Harry hit a stone floor. Fuck, he wheezed. He sat on the floor where he landed, surrounded by his floating lights, and quickly checked himself over. Once he was satisfied that he was just generously bruised, he got up slowly and made his way to the next door. Harry entered the room with the flying keys and immediately summoned one of the brooms. He kicked off into the air and smiled for a moment. Flying really was brilliant. He carefully swerved around the different keys, eyes open for the large silver one they used last time. After a minute of carefully searching, he grinned when he saw it. The blue wings on the key were bent, as if someone had recently used it rather roughly. Catching it this time was almost easy compared to the first time. Harry kept the broom in his hand as he eyed the chessboard in the next room. The white pieces were in front of the door. Harry certainly wouldn't be able to walk past them without being blocked. But could he just fly past them? He let himself actually laugh out loud when he realized that, yes, he could just fly right over and past the white pieces. Dumbledore was an idiot. He shrunk the broom and stuck it in his robe pocket with his cloak. He'd need it to get back out later. Harry pulled open the next door and almost decided to turn back immediately. What the fuck? He had nearly thrown up from the stench inside the troll room. He'd been around dead bodies before, and they never smelled great, but he had never been near a dead creature that had been left to rot in a room for over a month. He covered his nose and ran as quickly as he could through to the next room. He took a few deep breaths of the clean air inside the potion room before he approached the table. He pocketed the purple potion that would get him back through to the trapdoor and checked his pockets one last time before he drank the other. Wand useless, but here. Cloak check. Broomstick got it. Knife yep. Red rocks here. Harry took a deep breath, swallowed down the potion and stepped through the flames. POV swap tilde. In another part of the castle, Severus Snape was dutifully grading the students' end-of-year exams. He was pleased that his Newt students had all seemed to have passed the written exam and considered sending congratulatory notes to them all. He was jerked out of his gradding by a frantic knock on his office door. Enter, he called, curiously wondering what student would need him at nearly 10 o'clock at night. Mr. Knott, he said evenly, spotting Theodore entering the room. Your test scores will not be available until the morning of the end of term. Knott shook his head, approaching his desk slowly. That's not why I'm here, sir. I need to tell you something. Severus listened to what Theodore told him, hardly noticing that he had crushed his favorite quill in his hand. Go to your dorm immediately, he hissed. Tell nobody what you have told me, do you understand? Theodore, smart boy that he is, looked terrified and quickly left. Severus was going to kill Albus Dumbledore, and possibly Harry Potter, and definitely Quirinus Quirrell. What the fuck is wrong with these people? He thought irritably as he fled to the 3rd floor. The whole damn castle has lost the plot. Pov returned, . You, Harry gasped, but I thought it would be Voldemort. Quirrell smiled at Harry, and his eyes flashed a dark red. I assume this was your doing, he asked calmly, gesturing to the broken glass that covered the floor. Harry shrugged and gave the man a small and sharp grin. No, sir, I have no idea how that happened. Quirrell stared hard into Harry's eyes, until he began to feel uncomfortable, then scowled. You lie, he said coolly. Give me the stone, Potter. Nope, Harry popped the P in an effort to annoy the man. It usually worked on Professor Snape. Quirrell's left eye twitched before he snapped his fingers. Ropes sprang out of thin air and wrapped themselves around Harry tightly. Do you have the stone or not? He asked, stepping closer to Harry. That's not how this works, is it? You gotta answer my questions if you want me to answer yours. I am not playing games with you, boy. Am not playin' games either, Harry said simply, letting his magic dissolve the ropes around him. And don't call me boy. He tried to send his own ropes around Quirrell, but the professor quickly dispelled them. You're very interesting, Harry Potter, he murmured softly, giving Harry a thoughtful look. Do you have the stone? Do ya know where Voldemort is? Harry asked back, quickly dodging out of the way of a red curse Quirrell sent towards him. Is with me wherever I go, said Quirrell quietly. I met him when I travelled around the world. A foolish young man I was then, full of ridiculous ideas about good and evil. Lord Voldemort showed me how wrong I was. There is no good and evil, there is only power and those too weak to seek it. Since then I have served him faithfully, although I have let him down many times. He has had to be very hard on me. Quirrell shivered suddenly. He does not forgive mistakes easily. When I failed to steal the stone from Gringotts, he was most displeased. He punished me, decided he would have to keep a closer watch on me. Harry eyed Quirrell with interest. This wasn't how he pictured his night going, but he could roll with it. How you like to change sides? He asked. Quirrell laughed. I would never follow that fool Albus. Harry shot a bolt of lightning at him, that Quirrell easily dissolved. Didn't say Dumbledore, did I? You're pretty smart, sly too if you managed to trick him right. We could be a team, he offered. Quirrell paused, and Harry thought he looked almost interested for a moment before he scoffed, and sent another curse towards him. I already serve a master, I have no need for another. A high voice that seemed to come from Quirrell himself spoke suddenly. Let me speak with him, face to face. Master, are you sure you're strong enough? Quirrell asked hesitantly. I am strong enough for this. Harry watched as Quirrell unwrapped the turban on his head. What the fuck? He whispered. The turban fell away. Quirrell's head looked strangely small without it. Then he turned slowly on the spot. Harry might have screamed in surprise, but he couldn't make a sound. Where there should have been a back to Quirrell's head, there was a face, the most terrible face Harry had ever seen. It was chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. Harry Potter, it whispered. See what I have become, the face said. Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body. But there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. Now, why don't you give me that stone in your pocket? So he knew. He stepped backwards and held out the fake rock. Oh, this, he taunted the face. What'll you give me for it? Don't be a fool, snarled the face. Better to save your own life and join me. Harry tilted his head and thought about it. Would we be partners? Oh. The face huffed out a high-pitched noise that Harry thought may have been a laugh. Lord Voldemort has no equal, boy. Harry shot a cutting curse off towards the face. My name's Harry, he said lightly. Seize him, the voice roared. Harry felt Quirrell's hand close on his wrist. At once a needle-sharp pain seared across Harry's scar. His head felt as though it was about to split in two. He yelled out, struggling with all his might, and to his surprise, Quirrell let go of him. The pain in his head lessened. He looked around wildly to see where Quirrell had gone and saw him hunched in pain, looking at his fingers. They were blistering before his eyes. Seize him, seize him, shrieked Voldemort again, and Quirrell lunged, knocking Harry clean off his feet, landing on top of him, both hands around Harry's neck. Harry's scar was almost blinding him with pain, yet he could see Quirrell howling in agony. Don't fucking touch me, Harry gasped as loudly as he could. Master, I cannot hold him, my hands, my hands. And Quirrell, though pinning Harry to the ground with his knees, let go of his neck and stared, bewildered at his own palms. Harry could see they looked burned, raw, red and shiny. Then kill him, fool, and be done, screeched Voldemort. Fuck off, Harry snarled. Quirrell raised his hand to perform a deadly curse, but Harry, by instinct, reached up and grabbed Quirrell's face, planning to swipe at him with his knife. Argh. Quirrell rolled off him, his face blistering, and then Harry knew. Quirrell couldn't touch his bare skin, not without suffering terrible pain. He wondered if someone could actually die from blisters. He hoped he'd get to find out. Harry jumped to his feet, caught Quirrell by the arm, and hung on as tight as he could. Quirrell screamed and tried to throw Harry off. The pain in Harry's head was building. He couldn't see, he could only hear Quirrell's annoying shrieks and Voldemort's yells of, "Kill him, kill him," and other voices, maybe in Harry's own head, crying, "Potter, Harry." He felt Quirrell's arm wrenched from his grasp and fell into blackness, down, down, down. Something gold was right in front of him. He tried to bat it out of his face, but his arms were too heavy. "Potter, wake up now, brat," a familiar voice murmured. Harry blinked and then blinked again, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Here." Someone handed Harry his glasses, and as he adjusted to the faces in front of him, he flinched backwards in surprise. Professor Dumbledore. He shot an uneasy look at Professor Snape, who was seated in a chair beside him. "What's going on?" Harry swallowed and looked around him. He realized he must be in the hospital wing. He was lying in a bed with white linen sheets, and next to him was a table piled high with what looked like half the candy shop. "Tokens from your friends and admirers," said Dumbledore, beaming. "What happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret, so naturally, the whole school knows." Snape snorted, obviously unimpressed. I don't understand," Harry said quietly. "How'd I get here? Where, Quirrell?" "You're a little behind on times, my dear boy." Dumbledore smiled gently at him. Harry tried not to bristle at the placating way he called him, "my dear boy." "Pathetic orphan," a voice that sounded a bit like Snape, reminded him in his head. "You have been in the hospital wing for 3 days," Snape told him. "But where, Quirrell?" Dumbledore sighed but smiled at Harry with his blue eyes twinkling. "I see you will not be distracted from your question. Very well. Professor Snape managed to make his way into the chamber not far behind you. He prevented Quirinus from taking the stone, although you had done very well before his arrival." Harry noticed that he still didn't answer where Quirrell was, so he was probably dead then. He nodded at Harry with approval. "So where's the stone now?" Harry asked carefully, staring down at his blanket. "It has been destroyed," Dumbledore said solemnly. "I destroyed it as soon as I arrived, which admittedly was not nearly soon enough. Severus was nearly too late as well. If he had not been as quick as he was, you likely would have died." Harry kept his face as blank and impassive as he could. "But Voldemort's not gone, is he?" He peeked up at Dumbledore and saw he was still smiling down at him. "No, Harry, I believe he will find another way of returning. Nevertheless, while you may only have delayed his return to power, it will merely take someone else who is prepared to fight what seems a losing battle next time, and if he is delayed again and again, why, he may never return to power." "So he does want you to be a Voldemort shield?" Harry nodded but stopped quickly, because it made his head hurt. "I am surprised, though, that he did not attempt to sway you to his side." Dumbledore fixed Harry with a stare that made him stare back down at his lap. "He has always sought out those with power, which," he chuckled lightly, "we must admit that you appear to have." Harry scoffed mentally. Appear to have? What a thing to say when he probably just killed a man with his bare hands. Harry shrugged and glanced towards Snape, who was staring at him just as intently as Dumbledore. "He tried, but I told him I didn't want to be his follower," Harry said. It wasn't a lie, he didn't want to be a follower. Equals, maybe, having a master, as Quirrell had called him. Never. Dumbledore beamed at Harry and patted his knee cheerfully. "Those of us with kindness in our hearts and light in our minds will never understand the depravity of those like Voldemort. He's not even a little subtle, is he?" Harry leaned back on his pillow and feigned a small yawn. "Yes, sir," he said agreeably. "Very well, I shall leave Professor Snape to lecture you on the importance of staying out of forbidden corridors, and then you can get some more rest." Dumbledore winked at Harry, then left the hospital wing, humming an odd little tune as he went. "You are an absolute moron, Potter," Snape said coolly the moment the hospital door closed. "I cannot imagine what sort of arrogance was fueling your fantasy of facing and killing the Dark Lord alone." Harry looked at Snape and curled one side of his mouth up in a parody of a smile, even if it was probably a little too sharp to be considered friendly. "Quirrell's dead, ain't he? That's why Dumbledore wouldn't tell me where he is." "He is," Snape replied simply. Harry gave a more genuine smile to the professor. "Guess I wasn't so arrogant then, huh?" Snape rolled his eyes and crossed his arms. "You almost died, you moronic child." "Oh yeah, thanks for savin' me. Guess I owe you now." He didn't really want to be in anyone's debt, but Snape probably wouldn't want anything horrible from him. Probably. No, you do not, we are even. Harry glanced over at him, surprised. I never saved your life. The professor snorted, which Harry never fails to find amusing coming from such a stoic man. Your father once did. I owed him a life debt that I was unable to repay, so now, he gestured between himself and Harry, we are even. Harry thought about it and all he knew about Wixen culture, and figured it made sense that life debts could be generational. Then. I suggest you rest, Potter. Your friends have been irritating me hourly for updates. I am sure they will be along shortly to shower you in praise for being an absolute imbecile. Harry grinned and leaned back against his pillow. Can I ask you one question first? Snape smirked at him and inclined his head slightly, the usual terms. Harry nodded. When I touched Quirrell it made M burn, but I wasn't using my magic to do it, was I? How'd it happen, do you know? Snape studied his steepled fingers while he thought through his answer. Harry was nearly about to give up on receiving a response when he finally spoke up. The only response I have for you is Albus' theory. He believes that when your mother died she was not simply murdered. She sacrificed herself. She stepped in front of a killing curse to save your life. It is a rare type of sacrificial magic that she must have planned for in advance that allows you to carry that sacrifice in your very blood. As long as Lily's sacrifice is in your blood, and no others, then the man she defied at the end is unable to touch you. Harry stared at Snape until he lifted his dark eyes. Do ya believe that? I do, he said. Your mother was a genius. She knew that your family was being targeted. I do not doubt that she spent as much time as possible researching ways to keep her chaotic demon of a child alive. Harry nodded, ignoring the insult, and slumped back again. Why, he want to kill my family anyway? Harry saw Snape roll his shoulders once, in agitation or nerves. I believe our deal was for a single question each. Harry narrowed his eyes but nodded. He was right, maybe Draco would have an answer for him soon. Go ahead then. Snape, who previously looked almost nervous, got a sharp look in his eyes as he leant close to Harry. Where is the true stone? He whispered. Snape's bloody brilliant, Harry thought with no small amount of admiration. Destroyed, ain't it? That's what Dumbledore said, Harry said innocently. Snape huffed and continued staring at him. Here is what I believe happened, he said slowly. I believe you took off to attempt to avenge your parents' deaths based on a conversation that was staged for your benefit. I believe you brought a false stone with you. I also believe if the Dark Lord had offered you a partnership instead of a place as a follower, you would have joined. I also believe that the true stone is hidden somewhere in your possession. Are any of these beliefs incorrect? Harry positively beamed. It was nice to be understood by someone. Sir, I don't got any idea what you mean, he said innocently. I figured the conversation was too loud to be private. I'm not stupid, you know. But as far as anyone knows, I told Voldemort no, and Dumbledore said he destroyed the stone himself. You are a hurricane of chaos, Potter, Snape groaned. I should retire. Harry laughed. You ain't old enough yet, plus, who knows what'll happen next year. Snape, for some reason, just groaned louder at that. Harry looked up from a photo book Dumbledore left him, filled with photos of his parents, and smiled when he saw Hermione rushing towards him. Hermione, hey guys. The rest of his group circled his bed, and he smiled at them all, pleased to see them in person. You absolute complete utter bloody moron, Susan shrieked. How could you? Harry didn't pretend to misunderstand her, so he just shrugged and offered her a small smile. Was easy, wasn't it? Just didn't want you getting hurt. Susan glared at him, and Harry felt himself shrinking back against his pillows. Maybe he wouldn't get his friend back after all. Susan leaned right up in his face, ignoring his desperate scramble backwards. If you ever do that again I will kill you, she swore quietly. Which actually made Harry laugh quite a bit. You can try, but I'm startin' to think I'm hard to kill, ain't I? He asked, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. Ron, Theo and Blaise laughed, but Harry thought Draco, Neville and Hermione looked as unimpressed as Susan. We were really worried, Neville said softly. Professor Snape hasn't left your side since you came to the hospital, Draco told him. We thought you might die. Harry didn't miss the slight tremor in Draco's voice. He squirmed, uncomfortable with all of them staring at him and seeming so worried. Well, I'm not dead, so, he wiggled his fingers for dramatic effect. Ron snorted, but Susan looked like she was a moment away from smacking him. Which, best friend or not, would absolutely end badly for the witch. Everyone talking about what happened, Blaise whispered, but nobody knows for sure. Will you tell us? Harry met their eager eyes, gave them a tentative smile. All right, so listen. Harry told them about his trip down the trapdoor and his encounter with Quirrell and Voldemort, sparing no detail. The other kids were a brilliant audience. They gasped in all the right places, and Harry even heard Hermione whisper, "Fuck," which made him laugh. You told the Dark Lord to fuck off, Draco whispered, horrified. Yep. Dumbledore doesn't know about the real stone, Ron said quietly. Nope. What are you going to do with it? Not asked. Harry shrugged. He had an idea, but he wouldn't be sharing it, would he? Dunno yet. And you told Voldemort you'd only join him if you could be equals, Blaise asked. Yep, but I was gonna kill him anyway, was I? Still am. He killed my mum and dad. Ron nodded approvingly. Good strategy. I want to join you, Neville said quietly, immediately drawing all eyes to him. Yes, in the gang, Harry asked. Why now? Neville looked down at the ground and shrugged. I want to help K kill v Voldemort. Way to go, Nev, Ron clapped him on the shoulder. All right, Harry said easily. Neville, don't forget the rules, he added harshly. I don't owe any favors and you don't tell any secrets. He glanced at Hermione and Nott and raised his brows. Anyone else? They looked at each other briefly, before scowling nearly identical scowls at Harry. I'll be your friend, but I'm not joining a gang, Hermione said prissily. Nott shrugged, and my father wants me to wait until I'm older to make any formal alliances. Although, he gave Harry a tentative smile, you can call me Theo, since we're friends if you want. K, Theo it is. If you change your mind, just owl me at Blazers. You're going to Italy, Hermione shrieked. That's amazing, I've always wanted to go. She started rambling off questions about Wixen culture in other countries, but Blaise cut her off with a laugh. We aren't going sightseeing, he drawled with a grin. Harry and I will be spending as much time as humanly possible doing absolutely nothing. Harry saw Draco was fidgeting, looking like he was bursting to speak. What's up, Draco? Harry asked in a light voice. Something wrong? No, Draco said stubbornly, glaring at the floor. Harry smirked in his direction, knowing that he was probably dying to tell Harry about wanting him to come over during the summer. Dramatic prat, he thought fondly. When are you coming back from Blaise? Susan asked him. Harry knew he'd be going to Draco on his birthday, thanks to Professor Snape, but he shrugged. Dunno, couple weeks I suppose. Why? Because my auntie Amelia said you could come over this summer, that's what I wanted to tell you. Harry already knew it, and figured that's what she wanted to talk to him about, but was pleased that the offer was still open. Yeah, that'd be brill, just let me know when. Susan smiled and grabbed one of his hands, squeezing it tightly. I'm glad you didn't die, she said softly. Me too, Harry grinned at her. We're all glad you're alive, Ron assured him before glancing at his table, especially so you can share your candy with your friends. He waggled his brows at Harry, making him laugh. Harry threw out candy boxes to the other kids, his friends, and laughed along with them as they tried out the different flavors of Bertie's every flavor beans. Chapter 28, Leaving. Severus sat at his place at the head table, listening to Minerva as she chatted amicably in his ear. And of course I told them no, they absolutely could not sign up for Severus. Are you even listening? She demanded sharply. He took a hasty sip of his wine and raised his brows at her. Of course I am, he lied. Minerva scoffed and glanced over at his table, where his own eyes were continuously roaming to. I see my lion, Miss Bones, and Miss Granger with your snakes, Severus, but where is Mr. Potter? Surely Poppy is allowing him to return for the feast. Severus hummed, attempting to sound nonchalant. I was informed he would be released in time for the feast. He should be along shortly. Albus, seated on the other side of Minerva, leaned towards him. I told Poppy to make sure that Harry is present, he winked. He did a very courageous thing, and I plan to make an announcement. Severus scowled at him. I hope you are not planning on rewarding the brat for risking his fool neck. That's just the type of thing Albus would do to his prophesied golden boy. Severus, surely you would agree that Harry deserves recognition for his deeds. He risked his life to prevent the rising of Voldemort. I'm quite proud of him, as I am sure you are as well. Potter risked his life for vengeance, Severus thought to himself, knowing better than to share the important distinction with Albus. I would be more proud if Potter had informed a teacher, rather than taking matters into his own hands, Severus responded coldly. Albus had the audacity to just laugh away his concerns. "Ah," he said, looking towards the entrance, "here comes our boy." Severus followed his gaze and saw Potter stepping slowly into the great hall, a nervous expression on his face. Severus wanted to smash his head off the stone walls when, after a brief hush, nearly all of Slytherin table stood and turned towards Potter and began applauding. "Looks like James, doesn't he?" Minerva murmured. Severus couldn't even deny the resemblance as Potter stood there, proud as could be, basking in the applause of his housemates and friends. The brat had his chest puffed out and a tiny smirk playing in the corner of his mouth. "I'm either going to quit or retire," Severus muttered back, exasperated. As soon as Potter was seated, Albus stood and spread his arms happily. "Another year gone, and I must trouble you with an old man's wheezing waffle before we sink our teeth into our delicious feast. What a year it has been. Hopefully your heads are all a little fuller than they were. You have the whole summer ahead to get them nice and empty before next year starts. Now, as I understand it, the House Cup here needs awarding, and the points stand thus. In 4th place, Gryffindor with 312 points. In 3rd, Hufflepuff with 352. Ravenclaw has 426 and Slytherin, 472. Severus eyed his table proudly as they all cheered wildly. His snakes had worked hard in their classes, and aside from a very select few, they had all achieved high marks along with the Quidditch Cup and House Cup. It was a good day to be the head of Slytherin. Now taking into account recent events, Severus saw Potter's friends nudge him and sit up straighter. "I have a last-minute award to give," Dumbledore said, smiling benignly towards Potter. "To Mr. Harry Potter, for outstanding nerve and for bravery in the face of dark magic, I award Slytherin House 50 points. Severus spotted the tiniest scowl on Potter's face before he cleared it, and adopted a shy grin for his cheering housemates. "I would bet my last galleon the child is displeased to be publicly named as adverse to dark magic. And that means, with an outstanding total of 522 points, Dumbledore paused and dramatically waved his wand, allowing green and silver Slytherin banners to decorate the hall, that Slytherin has won the House Cup. Congratulations." Severus was furious for Potter to be rewarded for his act. He hoped the cunning child could see through Albus' blatant manipulations, but he could not deny that he was pleased to see Potter give a childlike cheer with his friends, nor was he unhappy to see Minerva looking as if she had sucked on a sour lemon when she congratulated him. He was rather confused during dessert when he saw Hermione Granger hand a slug to Susan Bones, who then licked it. The rest of the children seated in Potter's area all howled with laughter at the act. "What in the fuck? Professor Snape." Severus was overseeing the students, loading on to the Hogwarts Express, when Potter came sprinting up to him. "Potter," he said cordially, "are you prepared for your summer?" "Yep, gonna be brill." Severus hated the child's Cockney accent, and hoped that a summer with the likes of the Zabini Countess and Malfoys would help to fix it. "Well then you should get on the train, should you not?" Potter nodded and gave him a shy smile beneath his messy fringe. "Yes sir, I just wanted to give you this and ask if maybe you would write to me or something this summer," Potter asked softly, offering him a folded parchment. Before Severus could answer the child's question about writing to him, the boy had run off. Perhaps he knew Severus would be hard-pressed to simply ignore the child all summer if he thought Potter would be expecting a letter. "Bye sir," Potter called, leaning out the window of his carriage as the train began to move, waving madly. Severus lifted a hand in return, though he refrained from shouting after the boy. He glanced down at the folded parchment, curious what Potter gave him. Perhaps his address, maybe he did not understand how Owl Post worked. Severus' breath caught as he looked at what was not a parchment, but a photograph. Lily, on what appeared to be her wedding day. Her hair was done up in intricate braids and flowers, her white dress accented her petite frame perfectly, and as the photo looped through the movements she blew a kiss and winked. Severus stared at the photo, until it became blurry from what he refused to acknowledge were unshed tears. He cleared his mind, pocketed the photo, and thought about Potter as he walked slowly back to the castle. The child was an absolute tornado of chaos, trauma and idiocy. But somehow Severus found himself looking forward to the upcoming school year. End of Year 1.